Hi everyone, this is Karak from Angrycentaurgaming. Jeremy loins with a bulge to my orc friends and Penter one chop shop to my orc enemies. And today I'm going to white wizard up a review for Shadows of Mordor, a third-person action game from Monolith that seems to be the love child of Assassin's Creed and The Sims. Or maybe that's Assassin's Creed in your Facebook ignore list, but we'll get to that in a moment. So is this game Aragorn, a wily and tough thing with 1,000 lives and the ability to wreak havoc when called upon, or is it more akin to Pippin, a fairly ordinary and possibly slightly mentally challenged individual whose sole purpose is to just show up, not offend, and eat everyone's food? Let's check it out and see. Graphics are up first. I have to say that though the game doesn't run at 60 FPS on either console, both consoles look fairly good, with the Xbox One appearing to run somewhere around 900p versus 1080 or 720. Neither seem to stick to any exact frame rate though, but the nice thing is neither drop down below the 30 mark for long enough or even at all that I could tell. So you end up living with a bit of fluctuation while the PC port will run to whatever your specs and the grace of gods can allow, and depending on the day and if you've sacrificed an animal, because surprisingly, even on PC, the FPS seems a bit variable to me. Still playable, and it never gets in the way at all. Environmental effects are well done, with rain, hail, blinding sun, and the baking heat all represented fairly well, and they add a level of immersion to the game that many other titles just don't have. Since you can fast forward time in the game, many times you can take on missions in the dark, and when it's dark, slick with rain, and only the sounds of the Uruk grunting in some rhythmic, love-making Lenny Kravitz song, the game can be really atmospheric to say the least. So all in all, the graphics are top-notch, though it did look like there was some screen tearing from time to time, but not enough to be able to identify it was for sure happening. It did appear to be though. Even with a ton of enemies pressed belly to back like a human centipede, the game didn't drop frame rate. And that's commendable, as all the enemies look different. I mean, they're all knobby-kneed, freakish creatures made of blood, warts, and ancient medical refuse, but still pretty impressive little buggers when you think about it. Characters in cutscenes, including you, the main character, who is called Talion, but I just called him Aragorn beta version, look excellent, and lip syncing and animation are handled with an expert hand to craft immersion and atmosphere depending on the situation they're in. The sound is great, from the enemies flinging never-ending arrows at you as they whistle by your achy breaking mullet, to the clash of weapons as your enemy blocks you for the 433rd time. Everything is done well. Get thrown to the ground, the water and mud slopping sound can be heard like a giant wet willy the size of a human. Kick an enemy into the fire and the sizzle of their canvas army tent skin burning crackles delightfully and realistically. I assume I've never burned an Uruk, but if I did, I assume that's what they would sound like when they burned. Environmentally, the sounds never leave a blank spot in the audio spectrum, and in battle, it can easily assist you when you're balls deep in green fibrous skin and all you have to go on is the sound of your sword to tell you that you're still alive and kicking. Really well done. Snicker snack, that's it. Up next is music, hit and miss. There's some good sweeping scores, but there's also some odd blunders. When the game is trying to measure against the movies, it does well and holds its own. But when it goes off the deep end and a comedic character that not only seems woefully misplaced, but also just odd enters the picture, the music takes on a strange comedic, almost slapstick tone that rings hollow in both an atmospheric way, but also an artistic one. It was oddly jarring to say the least. I'll get to why that character's there in the game and what impact they have in a moment, but luckily he doesn't appear enough to Jar Jar Binks the game and ruin the musical score, but he does help bring it down just a peg. Voice, what can I say? It's great, spot on. Troy Baker's great as Beta Aragorn, and the enemies' voices are some amazing stuff. One-liners as you die, live, kill, run, rampage, revenge, burn, and slice enemies and the landscape alike. They all match up perfectly and add a very real heaviness and realism to a game about cutting up fantasy creatures that are a mix of toads and the worst co-renters in a Sims game, and all of them with a bone to pick with you for still being alive. Pretty much excellent voice throughout. Gameplay. It's time to turn this mother out. As a man who got killed but didn't die, your job is to find the secret of the creature you're cursed to inhabit your own mind, body, and soul with. An ancient elf of some mysterious past, your quest begins with you killing Uruk and ends with you doing the same. As you progress, you have a boatload of skills you can develop, from those that augment your stealth to those that stun enemies when you leap over them. The skills are a random bunch with no rhyme or reason to what they are or what they do. Luckily, they are uniformly awesome, with no skill being totally useless. You may sit back and go, okay, I flip over them and stun them, but then when you do it a couple times, you just sit back and accept that this is a fantasy world, and you go with it. Runes can be collected and upgraded on your weapons as you basically create the legends of the bow, dagger, and sword that are your own, though this is probably something that could add a good deal of enjoyment to the game, they're basically just some random bonuses and didn't have a tangible or noticeable impact in the world itself. So though you notice they hit harder or you gain life from an enemy's death, it would have been cool to see some atmospheric effects or some new sound from the weapons to sort of alert you that, hey, this sort of +5 to enemy's health, 45% chance to gain sexual gratification, and +3 to critical nut strike was actually doing something in the game. The basis of the game's been covered endlessly, and that's the Nemesis System, a fairly robust sim that runs in the background of the game that tracks who you fought, who won, how you fought, what happened, if you ran, if they ran, and a good deal of other variables, and then assigns them to the enemies. They have internal rivalries that are mostly noticed after the fact when you're ushered to the Nemesis screen to see where individual enemies are moving up and down in the ranks. Much fanfare has been levied towards a feeling that you can't defeat these captains, and you will have to gain intelligence to find out their weaknesses and strengths, and only then can you attack them. Additionally, as you fight and live, they change their appearance, gaining scars and metal plates and damaged areas, which can hilariously make them begin to look a bit half like a cyborg made from orc parts and garbage cans. They do inspire dread though, and a couple of mine looked really out of this world cool. However, I find it almost criminal that the reviews I've personally read and watched didn't cover some of the systems and how they interacted, and one of those systems is the game difficulty itself. It is bone-jarringly easy. Here was the first 6 hours for me. Counter, counter, flip, slash, slash, flip, counter, counter, critical kill, stun, flip, counter, counter, counter. Hey, Batman, what's going on? I killed captain after captain, sometimes 2 to 3 in a row without much difficulty, and the moment a captain climbed up a rank or two, I dispatched him with a blasé casualness that didn't match other reviews or previews I had read at all. I was told it gets harder in the second half. Nope. Not really. Sure, the game does some cool things by making enemies with severe restrictions in how you fight them, and sure, occasionally you'll get an enemy with a special power that regenerates them to full life. And sure, you can easily run away without hesitation. You can be attacked by the wildlife as well, and ride some of it into battle, like the Lizard King, which only made the game even easier. Oh wait, till you fight a war chief though, I was told. Nah, killed 2 of them really easily, and I don't count myself as being great at these type of games. So quickly my game became an almost comedic routine of the enemies as they died and died again. As they died, they jumped up in rank, only to die to be smote, sometimes 2 to 3 at a time with ease, by a dude with a sword and a ghost-sized chip on his shoulder. Will you like it and it'll make you think you're a badass? Maybe. Will you dislike it because it's so easy? Maybe. Whatever. Additionally, the game interjects a comedic enemy, an orc that sides with you and helps you turning on his own kind. That alone is fine, but the comedic route they went and the stereotype after stereotype after stereotype that they offered in the telling of this really hurts a tale with the gravity of this man seeking revenge, not deepened or highlighted due to the humorous, almost slapstick way this other character acts and reacts, but instead is made a bit shallow with him dropping the occasional one-liner about orcs. It feels oddly off-putting. Luckily, again, there's a boatload of stuff going on, and this only happens occasionally when this character is introduced or reintroduced or brought back or, in the game at all. Lastly, the game world is indeed fairly small. Not greedily small, but small enough that you're going to feel a bit like another recent game, Destiny, as you traverse the same 4 broken roads and 10 sets of ruins to kill enemies. While this game can be tedious, it does lend itself to knowing good routes amongst the enemies, and it can be fun to test yourself and see how hard you can push it and how fast you can kill enemies, even though it's in the exact same places. So let's cover this. What does Shadows of Mordor get right? Graphically, it's fairly impressive with a hint of an issue here or there. The Nemesis system is also interesting and robust in its offerings. The sound is top-notch. The actual gameplay itself is smooth without any noticeable hitches. What does Shadows of Mordor get not so right? It's mind-numbingly easy from start to finish. The Nemesis system is chaotic enough that one person's game may be lackluster in overall enemy type and cool factor, while someone else's might feel like a tailor-made game. The world is fairly small, and once you see it, you're going to have to see it again and again and again. So I rate games on a buy, wait for a sale, rent, or banish to the underworld rating scale. This is still a buy. It's a good game, fun when it needs to be, and has a ton of meat when it comes to secondary causes that can drive your Billy Ray Cyrus wannabe to collapse under the weight. The Nemesis system, though flawed, is fun and shows moments of brilliance, even if these moments are interspersed with what the fuck moments where apparently you trade your crappy gray cloak for Superman's and just go balls out nutting captains like sheep at a sterilization factory. The graphics are great, the sound is spot on, and the voices are impactful and add meaning to the game, even if at times it does its best to screw that over. So that's the review. I am done. Now I have to go back to the game. Gatemouth and Rotlip are chopping at the bit for me to teach them who's boss, and since they're both high level, I'll probably roll them like blunts at a Kenny G concert. Peace out.